27 years ago, a young nurse in San Antonio vanished after a night shift, leaving her family in despair. Police suspected her boyfriend, with whom she had argued, but found no convincing evidence, and the investigation quickly stalled. Still, over the long years, her mother and brother never gave up hope, clinging to the belief that justice would one day be served. Then, when next-generation DNA technology was applied, a seemingly insignificant detail in the abandoned Corolla changed the entire case. Before diving into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe. San Antonio, summer of 1998, the daytime heat still lingered, though the clock neared midnight. The stifling air blanketed the city, heat rising from the asphalt in invisible waves, making the atmosphere thick and oppressive. Methodist Hospital, where Marisol Vega worked, glowed like an oasis in the darkness, its glass windows reflecting blinding white light in long streaks. In the quiet hallway, the sound of footsteps and the hum of an aging air conditioner blended into the familiar dull soundtrack of late-night shifts. Marisol, 27, stepped out the main door, visibly exhausted. She was used to grueling shifts, but tonight her body felt heavier than usual. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from lack of sleep. Her shoulders slumped, her long hair hastily tied back with a thin band. As the eldest daughter in a Mexican-American family, she carried heavy responsibilities, working as a nurse while helping her mother care for her younger brother, Miguel. Neighbors in their small South Side community often called her La Muchacha Buena, the good girl. Carmen, her mother, stayed up late, as always, sitting by the window waiting for her daughter to return. In their small apartment, the living room light glowed, the wall clock ticking slowly. But Carmen didn't know that tonight, her wait would become a wound that never healed. The hospital parking lot was eerily empty. A few flickering high-pressure lamps illuminated scattered cars. In the distance, a dog barked then fell silent. Marisol clutched her purse to her chest, hurrying through patches of light and shadow, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. As she approached her red Toyota Corolla, her heart beat faster. Whether from fatigue or a strange premonition, she couldn't tell. She unlocked the car, her hand trembling slightly, then slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. The rearview mirror briefly reflected a figure standing in the distant shadows, tall, thin, wearing a light-colored jacket, motionless like a ghost. The security camera on a nearby pole, old and low quality, captured only blurry footage. In those hazy seconds, Marisol can be seen tilting her head, her dark hair shifting slightly as she started the engine. The Corolla's headlights flashed on, casting a brief beam across the lot before disappearing from the frame. After that, the screen showed only darkness, accompanied by the steady hum of the recording tape. No one knows what happened after that moment. All that remained was a figure lingering in the distance, a car driving off into the stifling night, and an oppressive silence. That was the last time anyone saw Marisol Vega alive. The next morning, as Texas sunlight pierced the thin curtains, Carmen Vega jolted awake from a fitful sleep. The small apartment in San Antonio's west side was quiet, save for the steady ticking of the wall clock. She sat up, glancing toward her daughter's room, where Marisol would usually emerge in a freshly laundered nurse's uniform, hair neatly pinned, offering a gentle smile. But today, the door remained closed. "Marisol?" Carmen called softly. No response. She walked over, pushed the door open, and her heart clenched. The bed was empty, the sheets untouched from the day before, no sign of anyone having slept there. Marisol's day shift uniform hung neatly in the closet, prepared as always for the morning. The phone on the nightstand was silent, unnervingly so. Carmen dialed her daughter's old Nokia, but it rang out with subscriber not available. Her hands shook as dread surged like a tidal wave. Miguel, her brother, woke to find their mother frozen in Marisol's doorway. He rushed over, eyes widening at the empty bed. "Mom, maybe she stayed at the hospital?" he said with a forced smile, though unease gnawed at him. Marisol had never stayed out overnight without telling the family. Carmen shook her head, tears welling up. They searched the house, checking every corner, hoping for a forgotten item or a note. But everything was unnervingly orderly, as if Marisol had never returned. By noon, worry turned to panic. Miguel drove to Methodist Hospital, questioning Marisol's colleagues. They were stunned. She left around midnight. We saw her head to the parking lot. One nurse recalled. She waved goodbye and said she had to get home because her mom would worry. Miguel rushed back to tell Carmen. They called the San Antonio police. That afternoon, an officer arrived at the apartment. He jotted a few notes. His tone detached. Maybe she just went somewhere with friends. Adults are free to disappear for a few days. Miguel slammed his fist on the table. My sister would never do that. She's never left without telling us. She had a shift this morning. Her uniform's still here. He pointed to the closet. The officer shrugged, scribbled, missing adult, voluntary, and left, leaving Carmen and Miguel stunned. The second night passed, the small apartment growing more oppressive. The phone rang a few times, only neighbors checking in. Miguel and friends scoured streets near the hospital, plastering missing Marisol Vega, 27, red Toyota Corolla flyers. Their eyes were frantic, torn between hope and fear. The Mexican-American community in West Side began to whisper. Women grew fearful, men scowled in anger. On the third day, with police still unmoved, Miguel drove through parking lots, bus stations, and late-night diners, searching for the red Corolla. Every red car made his heart race, but it was futile. That evening, returning home, he found Carmen slumped by a small altar, candles nearly burned out, lips murmuring prayers. Miguel knelt beside her, gripping her hand. I swear, Mom, I won't let this fade away. My sister didn't run off. Someone took her, or something terrible happened. In that cramped apartment, amid the cicadas' drone and Texas summer heat, despair and rage solidified into a vow. The Vegas knew they'd have to raise the alarm themselves, because waiting for the police meant Marisol would become just another name in a forgotten missing adult file on a cold shelf. And at that moment, their tragedy truly began. 3 days after Marisol vanished, the Vega family's last flicker of hope flared briefly before turning into a nightmare. On a sweltering noon, as Miguel posted more flyers, his phone rang. A neighbor's trembling voice, Miguel, I heard someone saw a red Corolla abandoned in the H-E-B parking lot on Fredericksburg Road. Miguel dropped his tape, racing to the supermarket. The vast lot held hundreds of cars under the scorching sun. But when he spotted the familiar red Corolla, his heart pounded. The car looked normal yet chillingly out of place. Unlocked, windows dusty, keys still in the ignition. He approached, fingers trembling as he touched the cold door handle. Inside, Marisol's nursing jacket was neatly folded on the back seat, as if carefully placed. The orderliness was eerie, amplifying his unease. He called Carmen, who arrived minutes later, face ashen. That's her car, she whispered, tears streaming. Onlookers gathered, murmuring. An H-E-B employee said the car had been there at least 2 days, untouched. Miguel called the police. When SAPD arrived, he and Carmen were kept behind a cordon. Officers gloved up and opened the car. The air was still, broken only by cicadas and the scratch of pens on notepads. In the trunk, Marisol's wallet remained, containing her ID, nurse's badge, and old receipts, but no cash. Strangely, there were no signs of forced entry or rummaging, as if someone took only what they needed. When an officer crouched by the driver's seat, he froze. Under the slanting sunlight, small dark bloodstains stood out on the floor mat. Silence fell for a few seconds before an officer quickly bagged the stained mat. Carmen, watching from afar, chest heaving, clutched her hands until they blanched. Blood, is that my daughter's blood? She whispered, nearly collapsing. Still reeling, Miguel noticed a long hair caught in the gear shift, glinting in the sun. He shouted, "That's not my sister's hair. Marisol's is black thick, this is lighter, almost light brown. An officer tweezed it into an evidence bag. The air grew heavy. Clearly, a stranger had been in the car, leaving a trace. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some said Marisol might have driven there herself, others insisted, "No, look, she'd never leave her jacket and wallet behind." All clues pointed to one scenario. Marisol didn't leave willingly, she was forced or attacked. SAPD marked the Corolla as a crime scene. They covered it, photographed every angle, and towed it to the evidence lot. Miguel stood outside the barrier. Eyes bloodshot, filled with rage and despair. He yelled at the officers, "Do something! This isn't a game! Stop saying she just went somewhere." Someone clearly took her, but the officers' faces remained impassive. Their process methodical and slow. That night, news spread across San Antonio. TV stations aired footage of the red Corolla being towed, reporters speaking urgently, the car of Marisol Vega, 27, a nurse missing for 3 days, was found in an HEB parking lot with disturbing signs inside. The images haunted the city, sowing fear in the Mexican-American community and families near Methodist Hospital. For the Vegas, finding the car brought no comfort. It only turned their anxiety into a tangible nightmare. The Corolla, once a symbol of Marisol's independence, her drives to work filled with hope and duty, now stood as cold evidence, silent as a trap, swallowing all answers. Miguel gripped his mother's hand, voice choked. "I promise, Mom, I won't let this fade. If the police won't act, we'll see it through ourselves." From that moment, the Vegas knew their search had shifted. They weren't looking for a lost loved one anymore, but facing the painful truth that a dangerous stranger roamed free, and their daughter was a victim. In the days after the red Corolla was found, San Antonio police began retracing Marisol's last steps. They returned to Methodist Hospital, interviewing nurses and doctors from her shift. A colleague, Elena, recalled Marisol looking unusually exhausted, her face gaunt from consecutive night shifts. She rushed out, saying she had to get home because her mom was waiting, Elena said, eyes teary. She didn't mention meeting anyone or going anywhere else. Everything seemed normal. Except she left so quickly, it felt off. This strengthened the theory that Marisol left the hospital with one goal: to drive straight home. Yet the 15-minute journey became an unexplainable void. Another witness emerged after news of the car spread. Linda Ramirez, living near I-10, called the hotline. That night, I don't recall the exact time, maybe around midnight. I was watering my porch plants and saw a red Corolla drive by, its taillight flickering like it was faulty. I thought the driver forgot to check it. She wasn't sure it was Marisol's, but the taillight detail matched her Corolla, which Miguel had teased, needed a trip to the garage. This clue, if pursued then, could have narrowed the timeline and direction. But records show police noted it, without deeper follow-up, dismissing it as secondary. Most crucially, the hospital security guard, Charles Bennett, who worked that night, reported seeing a tall man in a light-colored jacket standing by some trees, possibly smoking. Bennett didn't approach, assuming it was a patient's relative, and only recalled the detail after Marisol's disappearance. When he shared it with investigators, it was sidelined as police focused on Javier, Marisol's boyfriend. This oversight let a vital clue slip through in those critical early days. Scattered pieces emerged. An exhausted Marisol rushing from the hospital, a Corolla heading toward I-10 at midnight, taillight flickering, a man lurking in the empty lot. But investigators failed to form a cohesive picture. The case file recorded details coldly, lacking urgency. Meanwhile, the Vegas begged police to connect the dots, to find a lead. Miguel repeated, "My sister didn't vanish into thin air. Someone saw something, someone touched her." In reality, those details drifted in a thick file, buried among hundreds of cases. The lack of connection and investigative bias let the figure in the shadows erase their tracks. For the Vegas, The pain grew as they realized critical clues were being wasted right before their eyes. Amid the investigation's tension, Javier Torres became the focal point. Javier, 29, a telecom technician in San Antonio, had dated Marisol for nearly 2 years. They were a known couple in the West Side Mexican-American community. He was jovial, she was gentle, often seen together at church events and family gatherings, but their relationship wasn't perfect. Marisol's close friends said she wanted to enroll in a program to become a senior nurse, which Javier opposed, fearing she'd move too far ahead and leave him behind. The arguments, though never violent, created clear cracks. When San Antonio police approached, Javier was still reeling from the disappearance. He said that night, after work, he drove to his parents' home in South San Antonio, ate a late dinner and slept there. But his alibi was shaky. His parents said they were asleep before he arrived, only hearing the door open and close. No other witnesses confirmed his presence all night. For police, this was a fatal flaw. They noted boyfriend, history of conflict, weak alibi. Within days, Javier became the prime suspect. Pressure mounted as local media pounced. The San Antonio Express-News ran a headline, "Boyfriend questioned in nurse's disappearance." TV stations showed Javier leaving the police station, face weary, eyes red. Reporters crowded, microphones thrust forward. "Are you involved in Marisol Vega's disappearance?" He shook his head, saying only, "No," but the images spread citywide, sowing doubt among neighbors and co-workers. Whispers grew in grocery stores and cafes. "Maybe it's him. It's always the boyfriend." In truth, Javier cooperated fully. He let police search his car, allowed a home search, and voluntarily gave a DNA sample. Lab tests compared his DNA to the blood and hair in Marisol's Corolla. No match. This should have cleared him, but with police at a dead end, they spun it differently. Doesn't rule out him hiring someone. So Javier remained under suspicion, despite scientific evidence. In the weeks that followed, Javier faced relentless pressure. At work, colleagues gave him strange looks, and management suspended him, until the matter is clarified. His family faced neighborhood gossip. His parents heard whispers behind them at the market. Javier barely left home, except for repeated summons to the police station to answer the same questions over and over. Miguel, Marisol's brother, despite his own pain, sensed the injustice. He told a reporter, "I don't believe Javier did it. He loved my sister, even if they argued." But the police only see one direction. During interrogations, investigators hammered on the conflicts between Javier and Marisol. "You didn't want her to study further, right? You were afraid of losing her, weren't you? Did you two fight that night?" Javier shook his head, sometimes slamming his hand on the table in frustration. "We argued, but I'd never hurt her. I loved her." His assertions were recorded, but few believed them. Meanwhile, other leads. The Corolla found at HEB, the strange man in the hospital parking lot. The witness report of a car heading toward I-10 were pushed to the bottom of the priority list. The police seemed trapped in a tunnel fixated solely on Javier. This blind focus inadvertently allowed the real culprit to keep hiding out there. For Javier, those months were hell. He not only lost the woman he loved, but was branded a criminal in the public's eyes. He lived in torment, grieving Marisol and raging against the disbelief. One night, Miguel visited him, and they sat in silence for hours, listening only to the sound of passing cars. Miguel finally spoke, "I just want the truth. If you did something, say it. If not, I'll stand by you." Javier turned, tears falling. "I swear, I didn't do anything. I want to find who took Marisol from us too." But his vow was buried under a biased investigation. SAPD kept labeling Javier the prime suspect, dragging the suspicion on for years. While the city believed the culprit sat before them, the true figure in the shadows slipped further from justice's reach. In the month following Marisol Vega's disappearance, the San Antonio Police Department became fixated on one name, Javier Torres. Internal reports, case briefings, even press conferences revolved around him. Other files and witness statements were relegated to the bottom of stacks, gathering dust within weeks. The official record included a detailed statement from a hospital security guard describing a tall man in a light-colored jacket lingering near the parking lot during the time Marisol entered her Corolla. There was also a report from a woman who saw a red Corolla heading toward I-10 at midnight, its taillight flickering oddly. But no investigator was assigned to pursue these leads. A single line was scribbled, focusing on boyfriend, thus the trail of the shadowy stranger faded into oblivion. While SAPD poured resources into Javier, his and his family's lives unraveled. His parents, hard-working immigrants in West Side, faced suspicious stares from neighbors. Sunday church visits became torturous as whispers followed. That family has a killer. Their young granddaughter was taunted at school. Your cousin's probably in jail. Though Javier was never formally charged, the community's invisible verdict crushed them. Javier himself lost his job within 2 weeks. The telecom company sent a letter stating he was suspended indefinitely to protect their image. Longtime friends distanced themselves, ignoring calls, avoiding visits. From an ordinary man with a job, a girlfriend, and a clear future, he became an isolated, unemployed outcast under the city's scrutiny. On the other side, Marisol's mother, Carmen, clung to hope that police would crack the case. But she began sensing the investigation's flaws. She once asked a detective directly, "What about the man in the parking lot? What about the Corolla on I-10?" The detective shook his head, dismissing them as peripheral information and urging patience. For the victim's family, that patience felt like powerlessness. In press conferences, SAPD spokespeople repeatedly stated, "The boyfriend remains the prime suspect." But when pressed for concrete evidence, they dodged. "We're awaiting further test results, or we can't disclose to protect the investigation." In truth, DNA tests had already cleared Javier. But police clung to their old theory, as if afraid to admit they were wrong. The result was that after months, the case file grew thicker with redundant interrogations of Javier, but no new leads. Miguel, losing patience, once slammed a table during a meeting with detectives. "You've turned my sister's disappearance into a pointless witch hunt. Don't you see there's someone else out there?" The response was silence. In the fall of 1998, as public heat around Javier Torres cooled, parts of Marisol Vega's case file were sent to the Texas Department of Public Safety lab in Austin. The evidence from the red Corolla, small bloodstains on the floor mat, a long hair in the carpet, became the last hope to prove Javier wasn't the culprit. Forensic technicians, limited by 1998 technology, worked with early DNA analysis tools, far less precise than later standards. They meticulously scraped samples, compared them to color charts, tested chromosome segments via RFLP, and logged results in jargon-heavy reports. The conclusion brought the Vegas both hope and frustration. The DNA profile was incomplete, but confirmed the blood came from a man, not matching Javier's. Scientifically, Marisol's boyfriend was cleared, but police couldn't identify the true stranger. In an internal report, a typed line stood out. "Male donor, not matching subject Torres." This briefly lifted the burden from Javier. But for police, it posed a tough question: if not Javier, then who? The conclusion was sent back to SAPD, along with sealed bags containing the hair, blood, and small odd-colored fabric scraps. All were locked in the evidence room, a basement space with hundreds of wooden shelves holding thousands of cases sealed with yellow tape, labeled with case numbers. Marisol's box, marked 984521 MV, was placed in a dark corner, its fate uncertain. Lead investigator Lieutenant Robert Salinas noted in his log, "Stranger not ruled out." But instead of guiding the team, this note was buried amid Javier-focused reports. With no resources to pursue other suspects, SAPD let this critical lead slip. The Vega family, hearing the forensic news, felt momentary relief. Miguel told the press, "Javier didn't do this. DNA proves it." So why aren't police looking for the man who left blood in her car? His question met silence. In the late 1990s forensic landscape, incomplete DNA technology meant a dead end. The samples were too small, too degraded for a full profile. Without today's expansive CODIS database or genealogical DNA tracing, all police had was an anonymous hair, a few blood drops, and a vague assertion, male, not Javier. For San Antonio's community, this news barely registered. Papers printed brief back-page notes, forensics clear boyfriend, then moved to other stories. For SAPD, Marisol Vega's case was marked pending further evidence. The file joined the backlog, its evidence left in the evidence room's shadows, a reminder that justice sometimes hinges on immature technology. But for the Vegas, especially Carmen, this was proof their daughter didn't vanish into nothingness. A man had been in that Corolla, leaving blood and hair, and he was free out there. Carmen wrote shakily in her diary, "Police say they're not sure, but I'm sure a stranger took my girl." That pain, and the investigator's brief note, would seed new efforts later when technology caught up and the shadows receded. In the early 2000s, the San Antonio police sent a curt notice to the Vega family. Marisol's disappearance was now a cold case. In dry bureaucratic terms, this meant no full-time investigators, no budget for further tests, no press briefings. To the system, the case was just a thick file in a basement cabinet, stacked among hundreds. For the Vegas, it was another knife in an unhealed wound. They knew that to find justice for Marisol, they'd have to keep the flame alive themselves. Each year, on the anniversary of Marisol's disappearance, Carmen hung posters of her daughter on West Side utility poles. Marisol's portrait in her nurse's uniform, with her gentle smile, faded under Texas sun and wind, but Carmen replaced them, writing, "Have you seen her?" in hopes a passerby might recall a forgotten detail. Miguel held prayer vigils at San Fernando Cathedral, the historic church in downtown San Antonio, where candles were lit, each marking a year without answers. Family, friends, and a few of Marisol's old colleagues attended, but the crowd thinned yearly. Local media, once blaring "Mystery Nurse Vanishes," now gave only small columns, mostly on anniversaries. Younger reporters, lacking fresh leads, showed little interest. Readers moved on to newer stories, border drug violence, political scandals, fresher crimes. To the community, Marisol became a faint name, a past case. In their small South Side home, silence reigned. Carmen kept Marisol's bedroom untouched, bed-made day-shift uniform still hanging, as if she'd return any moment. Miguel spent hours poring over old news clippings, noting details police ignored, but he admitted, without new evidence, it was painful repetition. Both mother and son knew their faith was battling time's harsh erosion. By 2000, officially stamped a cold case. Marisol Vega's disappearance faded from San Antonio's collective memory. But in the family's hearts, each day was a reminder of a 27-year-old who left into a stifling summer night, her justice still unnamed. In 2003, a brief SAPD log entry noted, a young woman leaving Methodist Hospital at night, called 911, panicked, reporting a blue van following her for blocks. The driver, she said, was a tall man with slick-back black hair, wearing a light-colored jacket, staring intently as his van crept alongside. She escaped by ducking into a well-lit convenience store. Police arrived, took her statement, but when the van vanished, they filed it as suspicious activity, insufficient evidence. The report ended, no further developments. Had someone opened Marisol Vega's old file, they'd have seen a chilling coincidence. In 1998, a Methodist security guard described a tall man in a light-colored jacket lingering in the hospital lot the night Marisol vanished. Now, 5 years later, another woman gave an eerily similar description. But instead of linking them, police treated the new incident as unrelated. No one tied it to case 98-4521 MV. This was a grave mistake. A cold case, unupdated, sinks deeper into obscurity. Each unlinked clue breaks another thread in the web of truth. The Vegas never knew about the 2003 report. They kept hanging posters, praying, unaware that at the same hospital, a suspect with a matching description had resurfaced, like a ghostly reminder. When a cold case detective later found this, over 15 years had passed, too late to trace the van, its plates, or question witnesses with fresh memories. The failure to connect data cost a precious chance to solve the case sooner. The 2003 report's final line haunted, "Female safe, no further assistance needed." But the system needed assistance, a long-term memory, persistence to link details. By overlooking that clue, Marisol Vega's case stretched on, and darkness cloaked her family for years more. Learning the 2003 report was never linked to his sister's file fueled Miguel Vega's rage. From then on, he made a symbolic act. Every June 15th, the day Marisol vanished, he sent a letter to the SAPD sheriff's office. He recounted case details, highlighted ignored leads, and demanded explanations for the lack of progress. The letters usually got perfunctory replies, sometimes just a printed "no new information," but Miguel kept writing. For him, it was the only way to keep Marisol's name alive in the system. Meanwhile, Carmen chose the community path. She joined Mothers Against Violence meetings, gatherings of families with missing daughters around San Antonio. In small church rooms, amid choked sobs and trembling handclasps, she shared Marisol's story, the nurse leaving her shift, entering her red Corolla, and vanishing. Each retelling was painful yet hopeful, wishing someone might recall a clue or share the burden to lighten it. By 2005, Miguel and a tech-savvy friend launched Justice for Marisol, a website posting case details, Marisol's photo in her hospital uniform, a map of where the Corolla was found, and a call for anonymous tips. It spread quickly in Texas' Mexican-American community, cited by local papers. Each visitor's encouraging note was printed by Carmen and pinned to the wall, a reminder that strangers still cared. The Vegas knew they couldn't rely on SAPD. They became Marisol's voice. Miguel's letters pressured the system. Carmen connected with other families. The website was a faint beacon in the dark, but they also knew that without an evidence breakthrough, their efforts could only sustain hope, not deliver justice. In early 2018, after 2 decades of obscurity, the San Antonio Police Department announced a new cold case unit. Among dusty files, one stood out, marked Missing Adult, Marisol Vega, 1998. It landed on Detective Laura Martinez's desk, a seasoned investigator known for cracking complex murders. A San Antonio native, raised blocks from Methodist Hospital, she recalled, as a teen, seeing Marisol's posters on utility poles. Now 20 years later, she was tasked with writing the final chapter of this unfinished story. Martinez spent hours in the cold case reading room, flipping through the 2,000-page file. She found absurdly brief notes. Witness reported Corolla on I-10, not pursued. Hospital guard described tall man, light jacket. No further findings. DNA analysis, male, not Javier. Each page felt like a blow to her patience. They had leads from the start, she thought, but ignored them all to chase a wrong theory. She read the Vegas's letters to SAPD over 20 years, Miguel's annual pleas to reopen the case, Carmen's community meeting notes. They were a plea for pain unheard. Closing the file, Martinez vowed, they deserve better. Her first move was to review stored physical evidence. In the evidence room, Box 98 4521 MV sat on a lower shelf, dust coating its lid. Inside were sealed bags with the long hair, dried blood on the car mat, and the 1998 Texas DPS forensic report. Back then, technology failed, but now, 2 decades later, Martinez knew science had advanced. She contacted a modern DNA lab partnered with DPS, equipped with YS-TAR and genealogical DNA techniques, capable of building profiles from mere cells. In her submission, Martinez wrote, "Top priority. Analyze hair and blood from Corolla. Establish full DNA profile. Compare with CODIS and genealogical records. This was a turning point. Evidence silent for 20 years was finally brought to light. While awaiting results, Martinez revisited overlooked details. She found the 2003 report of the woman, followed by a blue van, near Methodist Hospital, matching the 1998 witness perfectly. She underlined tall man light jacket. To Martinez, these weren't scattered clues anymore. They formed a picture of a stranger, possibly preying around the hospital for years. In her progress report to superiors, Martinez didn't hesitate to highlight past mistakes. "We wasted 20 years fixating on Javier Torres," she wrote. "Now, only science can save this case." Her bosses nodded, approving more testing funds. Late that night, alone in her office, Martinez sat with Marisol's photo from the file, the nurse's gentle smile in her uniform. She whispered, "Marisol, I won't let them forget you again." Under the yellow lamplight, a new chapter in the case began, with modern science and a detective determined not to repeat past errors. When Marisol Vega's evidence box was moved from cold storage to Houston's Othram lab, Detective Laura Martinez's team knew this was their only shot to break 2 decades of silence. Othram, a leading U.S. lab, specialized in reconstructing DNA profiles from tiny degraded samples using whole genome sequencing. Technicians in white lab coats received the sealed bags with the hair and blood-stained car mat from the red Corolla, processing them under dim blue light in a clean room. The evidence was barely visible to the naked eye, but under microscopes, time-worn cells held secrets from that 1998 summer night. Analysis took weeks. DNA segments were extracted, amplified, and pieced into vast data chains. With whole genome sequencing, the lab didn't just find short fragments like in 1998, but nearly rebuilt the stranger's full genetic profile. When results arrived, Martinez received a thick report. The first page's bold line stood out: male DNA profile, non-matched to CODIS database. In other words, the man had no record in the national system. He'd never been arrested for a major crime or provided DNA for another case. At first, disappointment flashed in Martinez's eyes. She had hoped CODIS would instantly yield a name, but then she realized genealogical DNA testing was the key. Othram uploaded the stranger's DNA data to genealogy comparison systems, searching through millions of samples voluntarily submitted to commercial companies like GED Match and Family Tree DNA. Connections were traced, distant relatives identified. Within weeks, the genealogical analysis produced a notable list. A group of relatives living in Bexar County, just outside San Antonio. The profile showed the stranger's DNA was distantly related, about third cousins, to an Anglo-Texan family with deep roots in the area. From this, analysts built a family tree spanning dozens of names. Each branch was cross-checked with residency, occupation, and criminal records. As the list narrowed, Hector Hank Lawson stood out like a red dot in the data maze. Lawson, 62, lived in a quiet trailer park on the outskirts of San Antonio. But what caught Detective Laura Martinez's attention wasn't his current address, it was his past. In 1998, when Marisol Vega vanished, Lawson lived in a small rented apartment less than a 10-minute drive from Methodist Hospital. Martinez dug into old employment records and found Lawson worked as a night delivery driver for a medical supply company. His job frequently took him to hospitals, clinics, and medical centers around Bexar County, giving him a legitimate reason to be at Methodist Hospital at night, even familiar with the parking lot where Marisol was last seen. This realization chilled the team for years. They'd searched for a killer in the shadows, while he may have moved openly in familiar places. Digging deeper, court records showed Lawson was no model citizen. He'd been arrested for DUI in 1995, fined, and had his license suspended for 6 months. More crucially, in 1997, a nurse filed a harassment complaint against him during a night delivery. The case never went to trial for lack of witnesses and evidence, but the report noted a chilling detail: The victim described him as a tall, middle-aged man with blonde hair and a raspy voice. This matched the 1998 hospital security guard's description of a tall man in a light-colored jacket lingering in the lot before Marisol vanished. Martinez laid the two descriptions side by side, feeling the final picture emerge. What was once peripheral now became the case's cornerstone. Lawson was the figure overlooked from the start. She also found the 2003 report of a woman, followed by a blue van near Methodist Hospital. Cross-referencing old vehicle records, Lawson had owned a blue Ford Econoline, sold in 2005. The coincidence was no longer random. The cold case team built a timeline: 1995, Lawson's DUI arrest; 1997, nurse harassment complaint; 1998, Marisol's disappearance; 2003, the blue van. Witness. All linked to Lawson. The more they looked, the clearer it became. He was always there, in plain sight. But initial investigative bias let him slip through. Martinez contacted the retired security guard, Charles Bennett. Shown Lawson's 1990s photos, he nodded slowly. "I can't be 100% sure, but he looks a lot like the man I saw in the lot that night. Tall, blonde, with an unforgettable stare." This bolstered their belief they were on the right track. To be thorough, Martinez reviewed Lawson's old addresses. He often lived within miles of Methodist Hospital, frequently moving as if evading something. Former neighbors described him as a weird guy, drinking beer on his porch at midnight, quiet but always staring at young women in the area. With the puzzle complete, Lawson was no longer a potential suspect. He was the prime suspect. This time, not based on gut feelings like with Javier, but on modern DNA, forensic evidence, court records, and matching witness accounts. Martinez stood before the cold case unit's wall, covered with Marisol's photos, hospital lot maps, San Antonio layouts, and the DNA family tree. She touched Lawson's old photo, whispering, "Hank Lawson, you thought you escaped for 20 years. But justice doesn't forget." In that moment, the team knew they'd reached the case's heart. A name, a face, a flesh and blood person. This time, they wouldn't let him slip away. In the following weeks, Detective Laura Martinez stayed rooted in the cold case file room, where heavy wooden shelves held hundreds of dusty files. She knew if Lawson was Marisol's killer, his traces couldn't only be in the new DNA report. There had to be an overlooked piece from the past. Late one evening, under flickering neon light, she found it. Buried in the hundreds of pages from summer 1998 was a two-page report. Its ink faded. It noted a witness, a nurse from Marisol's shift, called to a lineup at the police station. The report stated the lineup included 6 middle-aged men, including Hector Hank Lawson, then briefly detained for questioning in another harassment case. The witness, though not entirely certain, pointed to Lawson, saying, "He looks like the man I saw in the lot the night Marisol vanished. Tall, light-colored jacket, blonde hair." This closely matched the guard Charles Bennett's description. But instead of pursuing Lawson, the report ended with a cold note. Identification inconclusive, no further action. Lawson was released, blending back into San Antonio's crowds, while SAPD fixated on Javier Torres. Martinez reread the note, anger surging. One subjective decision in 1998 had derailed the case. If they dug deeper, checked Lawson's work history, or noted his blue van, Marisol might have been found sooner, and Lawson wouldn't have had decades of freedom. This wasn't just one person's error, it was a systemic failure. A biased investigation, unchecked, and an obsession with one suspect let a dangerous man evade justice. Martinez noted in her log, "Evidence shows serious systemic error in initial investigation." Lawson was identified but ignored. She brought this to a meeting with superiors, laying out the 1998 report and stating clearly, "We had Lawson from the start." A witness pointed him out, but the fixation on Javier let him go. This proves SAPD let a killer walk free for 20 years. The room fell silent. Then the cold case unit commander nodded gravely. "We have to make this right." For Martinez, this didn't just strengthen the case against Lawson, It showed why the Vegas endured years of suffering. From their view, police made promises, took letters, but ignored clear leads. Now, with DNA and new records, Martinez was determined not to repeat that mistake. In the file room's dim light, she stared at the old reports. No further action. It was a curse haunting San Antonio's justice system. But for Martinez, it was a reminder that this time Lawson wouldn't vanish behind a lifeless note. This time, justice wouldn't be sidelined. After finding the overlooked report, Detective Laura Martinez knew she couldn't rely solely on genealogical DNA or a faded 1998 lineup to convict Hector Hank Lawson. She needed undeniable proof, a fresh DNA sample from Lawson matching the Corolla's evidence. That would be the final nail in the case. So SAPD launched a covert surveillance plan, the first time in over 20 years since Lawson walked out of the station as a free man. Lawson's trailer park sat on San Antonio's southern edge, near a highway to the suburbs. Weathered mobile homes lined up, paint peeling, tin roofs rusted, surrounded by overgrown grass and abandoned trucks. Lawson lived alone in a faded trailer, curtains always drawn, only a sliver of yellow light escaping at night. He had no wife, no kids, few friends, and barely spoke to neighbors. To the community, he was just the weird old guy drinking beer on his porch. To Martinez, he was the shadow haunting the Vegas for 2 decades. Surveillance teams worked in shifts, tracking Lawson day and night. They logged his habits, mornings at a nearby store for newspapers and coffee, afternoons drinking beer on his porch, evenings driving an old pickup to a roadside bar, returning before midnight. He was quiet, eyes dull, but occasionally sharp, as if always wary of being followed. Martinez warned the team, "He can't know we're watching. We need natural DNA, not court-ordered, to avoid defense objections." The chance came on a sweltering July afternoon. Lawson sat alone outside his trailer, downing Bud Light cans. At sunset, he sluggishly gathered the empty cans, tossed them into a black trash bag, and threw it into the park's communal bin. As he turned away, a surveillance officer, gloved, quietly retrieved the bag and secured it in an unmarked vehicle. Inside were the cans and a half-smoked cigarette. All were sealed and sent to SAPD's lab. When results came back, the team held their breath. The report read in bold, "DNA profile from beer can tobacco sample, 100% match to DNA profile obtained from blood and hair in victim's vehicle." No doubt remained. The man who left traces in Marisol's Corolla was Hector Hank Lawson. 2 decades of misdirected investigation closed with stark truth on paper. Martinez read the results aloud at a late-night cold case unit meeting. The room was silent, then everyone nodded. A veteran investigator said, 20 years, and he thought he'd escape. Miguel Vega, called with the news, choked out. Finally, justice found the right man. With a 100% DNA match, Lawson had no defense. Martinez began drafting an arrest warrant, preparing a detailed file to counter any defense arguments. She knew, after 23 years, many would criticize the system for overlooking Lawson initially. But now, the truth was back, and it wouldn't be dismissed by a cold note again. With the perfect DNA match in hand, Detective Laura Martinez knew time was short. Lawson had lived free for over 20 years, and a man with his violent history could become erratic if he sensed he was being watched. Martinez called an urgent meeting with SAPD commanders and Texas Rangers to plan the operation. On a map spread across the table, she pointed to Lawson's trailer park. "It's cramped, with multiple exits and many neighbors. We need to ensure he can't flee or harm anyone." Security records showed Lawson owned a handgun during his 1995 DUI arrest. Though his permit expired, he likely still had weapons in the trailer. This prompted SAPD to deploy their SWAT team, with Texas Rangers forming an outer perimeter to seal the area. Martinez stressed, "We take him alive, no mistakes." The Vegas deserved to hear him confess. In the days before the operation, surveillance continued tracking Lawson's routine, morning newspapers, afternoon beers, late bar visits. His calm made the plan tenser. A criminal who thinks he's safe is more dangerous, capable of violent reaction when cornered. On July 15, 2021, San Antonio's heat was oppressive, the sun high early. The team gathered near the trailer park, SWAT in full gear, checked radios and mapped entry routes. Martinez watched the clock, heart heavy. 23 years of waiting, now just minutes away. As the signal went out, police vehicles rolled silently into the park, tires crunching gravel. In a flash, the false calm shattered. SWAT stormed Lawson's trailer door shouting, "Police, search warrant." Dogs barked, windows flung open, neighbors stirred. Lawson, roused from a nap, barely registered before the door was smashed. SWAT subdued him in seconds, leaving no chance to resist. On his table, an old pistol lay, confirming Martinez's fears. As Lawson was cuffed and led out, sunlight hit his aged face, thinning gray hair, eyes still sharp. Neighbors froze, some gasped no way he was so nice. But to the team, it was truth's moment. The man who tormented a family for over 2 decades faced justice. Martinez stood still, watching Lawson loaded into a patrol car, relief mixed with bitterness. She knew the legal fight was just beginning, but this marked a milestone. The darkness of summer 1998 was torn open, and Hector Hank Lawson could no longer hide behind a normal facade. News of Hector Hank Lawson's arrest spread like wildfire on a windy day. Hours after SWAT stormed the trailer park and cuffed him, San Antonio TV stations broadcast live from the scene. Images of an old man with gray hair, in a crumpled shirt, led away by police-stunned neighbors. A middle-aged woman holding her child whispered to cameras, "He was so nice, gave candy to kids." "I can't believe he's tied to this," another man stared, shaking his head. "All these years, I thought he was just a lonely old guy." Those words became the next day's headlines, neighbors shocked. Friendly man revealed as 1998 case suspect. Newsrooms ran bold headlines, 23-year cold case, finally has suspect. Reporters replayed 1998 footage of the red Corolla, towed from HEB, juxtaposed with Lawson's 2021 arrest. The contrast chilled viewers. 23 years formed a closed circle, now with the hidden man exposed. National TV also covered it, calling it a prime example of new DNA technology cracking cold cases. For the Vega family, the moment was a collision of relief and horror. When Detective Laura Martinez called, Carmen sat silent for minutes, tears streaming. "They caught him, after all these years?" Her voice trembled, disbelieving. Miguel, who'd fought for 2 decades, choked up before cameras. "We've waited so long, every night I prayed for answers, and today they came. But justice, this late, is still a wound." In West Side, where the Vegas lived, neighbors gathered, lighting candles outside their small apartment, pinning Marisol's old photo to a pole, affirming her memory never faded. An elderly woman told a reporter, "That girl was so kind, everyone loved her. We never stopped remembering her. Now at least, she has a voice, thanks to DNA and her family's persistence." Even within the police community, Lawson's arrest sent shockwaves. Several retired investigators admitted to the press that the case could have been solved sooner. One, speaking anonymously, said, "Our biggest mistake was focusing too much on the boyfriend. We had Lawson in our sights, but we let him go." This belated confession sparked debate about SAPD's handling of cold cases. For San Antonio's public, Marisol Vega's case became a hot topic after years of obscurity. Local talk shows invited forensic experts, lawyers, and victims' families to discuss it. Some were outraged at justice's delay, others praised science for uncovering the truth. But all shuddered at the thought of a dangerous man living among them for over 2 decades, unnoticed. That evening, Miguel stood on the steps of San Fernando Cathedral, where his family had held countless vigils. Before him, hundreds of candles flickered, hymns rising in a tear-soaked air. Holding a microphone, his voice choked. "My sister is gone, and nothing can bring her back. But today, I want to tell every suffering family out there, never give up. Justice may come late, but it will come. Applause mixed with sobs echoed in the historic cathedral, a response to 23 years of silence. In the days following his arrest, Hector Hank Lawson was brought to an SAPD interrogation room. A gray-walled space with a cold metal table, 2 chairs, and a camera blinking red in the corner. Lawson sat, hands lightly cuffed, his aged face sharp with cunning eyes. As Detective Laura Martinez and a colleague entered, he spoke first. "I never met that girl. You've got the wrong guy." His raspy voice was clear, as if rehearsed. Martinez placed a thick file on the table, opening to the first page. DNA results from Othram Lab and SAPD. "Lawson, this is the genetic profile from the blood and hair in Marisol Vega's car in 1998. This is from the beer can you discarded last month. Comparison 100% match." Lawson smirked, feigning calm. "I don't know who left blood in that car. I never set foot in it. DNA can be wrong. You know machines mess up." The second investigator leaned forward, voice firm. "Whole genome sequencing has near zero error. We also have a 1998 witness, a hospital guard describing you, blonde, tall, light-colored jacket, loitering in the lot. We have a 2003 report, a woman followed by a man in a blue van, registered to you. It all points to you, Lawson." His face flickered but quickly hardened. Lawson's appointed defense attorney, seated beside him, jumped in. "We're talking about genealogical DNA, still debated in legal circles. It's not enough to prove my client's guilt. You're building a story on speculation and 20-year-old memories." Martinez glanced at him, then opened another file. "This isn't just genealogical. We took your client's DNA directly from the beer can and cigarette, matching the Corolla's samples. That's not genealogy, that's direct evidence." The room grew heavy. Lawson leaned on the table, veins bulging, voice low. "I told you, I don't know her. Maybe someone set me up. You needed a scapegoat, and I'm it because of my past." Martinez held a cold stare, unswayed by his act. "You can lie to us, Mr. Lawson, but you can't lie to science. DNA never forgets." The interrogation stretched for hours. Investigators laid out the timeline. Lawson lived miles from Methodist Hospital in 1998, worked night deliveries there. They cited the 1997 harassment complaint, the 2003 van incident, all centering him. But Lawson repeated, "I don't know her. I never met her." His voice grew weary, but clung to denial. Outside, Miguel and Carmen waited silently. Miguel gripped his hands, whispering, "He'll never confess. But at least we have evidence now." Carmen nodded, eyes red, knowing the fight was long but no longer rested on hope alone. As the session ended, the defense attorney stepped into the hall, telling reporters, "My client's been dragged into this by controversial technology. Genealogy isn't absolute proof. We'll fight to the end." But Martinez knew the thick files held undeniable truth. DNA wasn't human memory, it didn't fade or err with time, and it had brought Lawson back to that 1998 parking lot where Marisol Vega was last seen. In the weeks after the first interrogation, Hector Hank Lawson held firm in his denial, repeating, "I never met her," like a flimsy shield against the DNA evidence weight. But the jail cell's silence and relentless interrogations wore down his resolve. Each time investigators showed him photos, the red Corolla, Marisol's posters, the perfect DNA match, his eyes wavered. Martinez knew the truth was cracking within him, needing only time to break open. Finally, on a stifling August morning, Lawson sat in the interrogation room, looking defeated. Without prompting, he rasped, "All right, I'll talk." Martinez, keeping calm, signaled her colleague to start recording. Lawson stared down, hands trembling, and confessed. He said on June 15, 1998. He saw Marisol alone in the lot after her shift. Drunk, dark thoughts flooding his mind, he approached as she entered her Corolla, opened the passenger door, and forced his way in with a knife. Per his confession, Lawson drove the Corolla from the hospital to a desolate lot in Medina County, a spot he knew from delivery stops, empty at night. There, in a drunken frenzy, he attacked her, then strangled her to silence her. He buried Marisol's body in the dry earth, covering it with a tarp before leaving, abandoning the car days later at HEB to mislead. Finishing, Lawson slumped back, sweat dripping, as if unburdened after over 20 years. Martinez wasted no time. She secured a court order and led a team of forensics, Texas Rangers, and diggers to the site Lawson indicated, a vast, weed-choked lot off a highway near a small creek. Under Texas' scorching sun, each shovel's thud rang out, the air tense. Everyone knew this was the moment. Find the truth, or face another dead end. After hours, a forensic tech shouted, "Bones!" The team froze. Beneath the hard earth, human bones emerged, dusted with moss. Nearby, a green fabric scrap, the nursing uniform Marisol wore that night. Carmen and Miguel, informed but kept at a distance, sobbed upon hearing the news. Police set up a tent, cordoned the area, handling each piece like sacred remains. Days later, the bones were sent to Bexar County's forensic lab. Experts compared dental records to Marisol's 1995 hospital file. The result, it was her. 23 years after that night, Marisol Vega was found, no longer a shadow in memory, but a tragic truth in bones and undeniable evidence. Receiving the remains, Carmen clutched the small box of bones, tears streaming. "My daughter's finally home," she said, choking. Miguel, gripping her shoulder, eyes blazing. "No one can say she ran away anymore. Justice named her." Martinez quietly left, giving the family their moment. For her, this case was more than a job. It was a promise kept after decades of neglect. In March 2022, Bexar County Courthouse became Texas' focus as Hector Hank Lawson faced trial for kidnapping, assaulting, and murdering Marisol Vega. Reporters crowded the gates, cameras rolling as Lawson's siren-blaring transport arrived. He stepped out, aged, gray-haired, in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, eyes defiant yet hollow. Local headlines blared, 23-year cold case closes in Bexar County Court. In the first session, prosecutors presented a 300-page indictment, opening with irrefutable DNA evidence. The defendant's confession confirms what we've long known. Witnesses from 1998 and 2003 provide the final pieces. Hector Lawson took Marisol Vega's life. The jury listened, some bowing their heads as prosecutors showed the red Corolla, blood samples, hair, and the dirt-stained nursing uniform from Medina County. The defense fought back, claiming Lawson's confession was coerced under mental strain after weeks of interrogation. They questioned genealogical DNA's reliability, noting it traced through family lines initially. But prosecutors countered with the beer can and cigarette DNA, live, direct, 100% matching the Corollas. "This isn't genealogy," the prosecutor snapped. "This is modern forensic science," pointing straight at Hector Lawson. The Vegas testified. Carmen, clutching Marisol's old photo, voice trembling. "For 23 years I waited. Every morning, I woke in an empty house, looked at her room, hoping she'd return. But there was only silence. He took my daughter and my life." Miguel stared at Lawson, eyes red but firm. "I wrote dozens of letters to police, begged for justice for decades. He sits there like a victim, but he'll never know the pain of losing family and living in forgotten shadows." The courtroom fell silent. Some jurors wiped tears. Outside, the community held candlelight vigils for Marisol. San Antonio residents, many who knew or heard of her, brought flowers, placing them by her old poster. A neighbor told reporters, "We lost faith justice would come. But thanks to the family's persistence and DNA, Marisol finally has a voice." The trial spanned weeks, covered heavily by Texas and national media. CNN, The New York Times, and USA Today ran analyses, calling it a landmark cold case solved by genetics. Texas TV aired live debates between prosecution and defense. To the public, it was more than a crime story. It was proof of persistence and justice's power. When prosecutors closed, They played Lawson's confession tape. His shaky voice echoed, "I took her from the lot. I drove her to Medina. I buried her there." The jury sat motionless, undeniable truth before them. Despite Lawson's claims of coercion, his own voice ended his defense. As the trial neared its end, Bexar County Court's air grew heavy. The jury took 2 hours to verdict. Guilty on all charges. Carmen sobbed, leaning into Miguel. Lawson sat still, eyes empty, staring ahead, as if expecting the outcome. On sentencing day, Bexar County Courthouse was packed, not a seat empty. Outside, dozens of reporters jostled, broadcasting live. Hector Hank Lawson, in his orange jumpsuit, was led in, face gaunt, gray hair disheveled, eyes vacant. As the judge spoke, the room was silent. After reviewing all evidence, the confession and the jury's decision, this court sentences Hector Lawson to life without parole. The gavel strike rang like an end to 23 years of darkness. The Vegas embraced, Carmen sobbing in pain and relief. Justice came, late but here, she whispered. Miguel, eyes red, gripped her hand. My sister finally has a voice. Her name won't sit in a cold file anymore. The judge continued, voice resonant. Justice may come late, but it never vanishes. This proves relentless effort and scientific progress can answer families waiting too long. Post-trial, media across Texas and the U.S. reported widely. CNN headlined, San Antonio cold case, justice after 23 years. The New York Times noted, DNA and persistence unmasked killer. The story wasn't just a verdict. It became a symbol of justice revived in cold cases. The Vegas, instead of dwelling in resentment, turned pain into a positive legacy. They founded the Marisol Vega Scholarship Fund, awarding annual scholarships to nursing students at Methodist Hospital and the University of Texas at San Antonio. Marisol gave her short life to nursing. Miguel said at the fund's launch, "We want her name to live on with young people learning to save lives." Each scholarship kept Marisol's memory alive, not just as a victim, but as inspiration. The case's impact reached Texas' legal system. State lawmakers, seeing DNA's success in solving cold cases, voted to increase funding for cold case units. Labs gained new tech, and young detectives trained to follow Martinez's path. At an Austin hearing, Martinez said, "If we'd had these resources sooner, the Vegas might not have waited 23 years. We can't let that happen to another family." In San Antonio, every June 15th, San Fernando Cathedral holds a candlelight memorial for Marisol. Not just family, but the community attends, bringing flowers, photos, and stories never forgotten. The young nurse's gentle smile became a symbol of hope and persistence. Hector Lawson will die in prison, alone and forgotten. But Marisol Vega's name lives on, etched in her family, community, and Texas justice system. The case closed, but its legacy opened a new path, one where justice, though late, can still pierce the darkness. The story of Marisol Vega's 1998 San Antonio case is not just a personal tragedy, but reflects ongoing issues in American society today. The initial investigation's delay and misdirection, with SAPD fixating on boyfriend Javier Torres while ignoring the strange man in the hospital lot witness, show the consequences of bias and unobjective investigation. This reminds us that in modern life, work, school, or community, rushing to conclusions without thorough verification can ruin lives and delay justice. Meanwhile, the Vega family's persistence, Miguel's annual letters, the Justice for Marisol website, prove citizens' voices can sustain societal attention and force systems to act. The lesson for today is to relentlessly demand transparency and hold responsible agencies accountable, as justice doesn't come if we stay silent. Additionally, next generation and genealogical DNA's breakthrough in identifying Hector Hank Lawson, after 23 years, shows that investing in science and cold case units not only solves old cases, but sends a message: no crime truly vanishes. In today's U.S., with many unsolved disappearances and murders, Marisol's story teaches patience and the push for reform. Never assume the past is closed. Justice, like in Marisol's case, may come late. But with community, and scientific persistence, it will come. If you want to follow more journeys for justice, like Marisol Vega's case, hit subscribe to stay updated. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with another gripping cold case story.